Most of the food we eat every day, like rice, roti, bread, or potatoes, is rich in starch. Starch is one of the main carbohydrates in the human diet and an important source of energy. But starch is a large molecule and our body cannot absorb it in that form. So, digestion has to begin by breaking starch down into smaller pieces. Interestingly, this process starts even before food reaches the stomach. Digestion of starch begins right here in our mouth. Starch is a polysaccharide, which means it's made up of many smaller sugar units called glucose joined together. In plants, starch occurs mainly in two forms, amylose and amylopectin. If we imagine a single glucose molecule as one building block, amylose is formed when these blocks join together in a long, mostly straight chain. Amylopectin, on the other hand, has a branched structure, with side chains coming off the main chain. Our mouth contains salivary glands that release saliva. Saliva contains an enzyme called amylase. Amylase begins breaking down starch as soon as we start chewing. It breaks amylose into smaller sugar units called maltose, and it breaks amylopectin into shorter, branched chains known as dextrins. This is only the first step of starch digestion. Later in the small intestine, other enzymes further break maltose and dextrins into individual glucose molecules. These glucose molecules are then absorbed into the bloodstream and used by our cells to produce ATP, the energy currency of the cell, through cellular respiration. In this activity, we'll focus on this very first step of digestion, the action of amylase on starch, and we'll investigate it using smartphone-based color measurement method we used in the previous lesson. So instead of just reading about the enzyme, we'll observe, measure and analyze how this reaction happens over time. For starch, I'll be using refined corn flour, which is an easily available and reliable source. When iodine is added to starch, it turns deep blue-black color. This happens because iodine fits into a long coiled part of amylose. Amylose forms a spiral shape and iodine molecules get trapped inside the spiral, forming a colored complex. This structure changes how light is absorbed, which is why we see the blue color. Glucose molecules, on the other hand, are much smaller and don't have the spiral structure, so iodine cannot bind to them. As amylase breaks starch down into smaller sugars, this spiral structure is lost and the blue color slowly fades. For iodine, I'll be using tincture iodine, which is a solution of iodine and sodium iodide dissolved in alcohol. Iodine is sensitive to light, which is why it's usually stored in amber-colored bottles. I've taken 1 drop of iodine, about 0.1 milliliters, and diluted it with 25 milliliters of drinking water. If you plan to store the diluted iodine, make sure to keep the tube covered with aluminium foil and store it in the dark. You'll also need a few test tubes or clear cups and medicine droppers. As you can see, I've labeled my droppers. This helps prevent accidental or unwanted mixing of starch, iodine and amylase before the experiment begins. And finally, we need our enzyme source, which is saliva. Amylase is present naturally in saliva, but make sure you use only your own saliva. Body fluids can carry bacteria or viruses, so it's important not to use saliva from friends or family members. You must have heard this. Food should be chewed 32 times before swallowing. And this experiment really shows why. You can actually see salivary amylase digesting food in real time. If the idea of using saliva makes you uncomfortable, and I know some of you may feel that way, there is another option. You can soak a tablespoon of wheat grains in lukewarm water overnight, grind them the next day, and strain the mixture using a muslin cloth. The clear sticky liquid you get is an excellent plant-based source of amylase. Finally, you will need a smartphone to record RGB values. I'll be using a tablet as a colored light source, but you can also use something as simple as yellow chart paper and it works just as well. So that's everything we need. Let's get started.